Welcome to Investing 2030, Return on Impact, the New Future of ROI. Once seen as a philanthropic gesture to support ventures, impact investing is now a massive movement to transform return on investment to return on impact, with an estimated $2.1 trillion under management in 2020. With the COVID-19 pandemic having disrupted our economies, and the urgency of climate action and social justice elevating the global importance of the Sustainable Development Goals, we wonder, what might impact investment look like by 2030? Impact Hub Houston hosted Investing 2030 to provide a window into this future, where a surge in entrepreneurs developing global solutions to the world's most pressing issues intersects with the next generation of funders who pursue triple bottom line investing with an environmental, social, and governance or ESG lens. In the following panel, Houston, We Have Impact, you will learn firsthand from Houston-based impact ventures about the realities of raising capital to grow and the opportunities for ESG corporate venture groups and socially responsible investors to put their money to good use. These diverse founders will share what it's like for energy transition, consumer goods, digital health, and international startups to raise seed, Series A, and Series B rounds, as well as raise capital through crowdfunding, bootstrapping, pitch competitions, and more. You'll hear from Trevor Best, co-founder of Syzygy Plasmonics, Emmeline Strout, founder of Elastique Athletics, Eric Ibarra, founder of Orders, and Mike Sezu, co-founder of Global South by South Consulting. With that, Trevor, you want to kick us off with your startup and fundraising journey?
So the story of Syzygy goes way back to really understand who we are and who I am. Got to go back to 2013 when I started trying to start my first company. And it was called H2 Open Source. It was about open sourcing problems or open sourcing solutions to the world's water problems. And in this, I learned the importance of picking the right team. And I tried to get a bunch of friends together to start this company, and no one could make time for it. Everyone was too busy going to concerts or going out to the bar on Saturday night, and nothing ever got done. And so I didn't have the right team. And after a few months of spinning our wheels, that one died. So learned the importance of team. And the next one, teamed up with some different people on a fueler. We were going to be delivering fuel through an app, sort of like Uber, but for gasoline, where you hit an app on your phone and it will deliver gasoline directly to your car. On this one, I didn't actually build a financial model for the company. And so it wasn't until 6 months in that I found out whenever I started trying to raise money and someone asked me, how many cars do you have to deliver gas to make $1 million? And I started building a financial model and I realized that the thing can't actually make money. And so that business died shortly after that. The third one was Matabios, and it was around a new type of water filtration technology. That was where I teamed up for the first time with my co-founder, Dr. Suman Kadiwada. We actually made a water bottle that you could shake for 60 seconds, and you shake it for 60 seconds and it actually kill all of the bacteria and virus in the water. And we were super excited about this, and we started getting everything together for the company. We started applying for grants, and then we found out that the intellectual property behind this new filter was a quagmire. The person that we were buying this material from was definitely stealing the IP from somebody else, and multiple major companies were suing each other over the rights for it. And we were like, oh my goodness, if we take this to market, we will immediately get crushed by lawsuits. So then we learned about the importance of tech diligence. So, right team, got to make sure the company can make money, got to make sure the technology is in a good place. Then we went out to start Syzygy. So that one is the one we're doing today. That one's been very, very successful. We found the technology, did all the diligence on it. And after everything checked out, we decided to leave our jobs at Baker Hughes in 2017 and started fundraising. And our first pitch was like, hey, we found this plasmonic metamaterial that can excite hot electron transfer in the D band of current covalent materials, and it can help enable new types of chemical manufacturing. And no one made it through our first pitch without falling asleep. So we weren't very successful on raising money. And over the next 12 months, I learned how to hone things down to very simple, big statements that people could gravitate towards, like we make cheaper, cleaner chemicals. And, becoming more promotional and learning how to talk about things was a journey that took us about 12 months. But after that, we successfully raised about $1 million from angels, and it was primarily a friends and family round. So these were people who'd worked with us before at Baker and other companies, and including myself, my co-founder put money in, and the other inventors from Rice University put money in, and that gave some confidence to some other investors to follow along. And that's how we successfully raised that round. The next round, the A, that was a total of $9.7 million in 2019. That one came together rather interesting. So we actually started talking to Goose Capital here in Houston, and they led our round. And it was a really good start. We were talking to some really big names. And unfortunately, about a month before our term sheet was to close, or a week or two before our term sheet was about to close, we had a couple big names drop, and we had about 30 major investors drop along with them. And thank goodness we had a couple like Goose and Evoke, really stuck in and said, we believe in this, and they held their ground. And over the next, couple months, the next couple weeks, we were able to scrounge together. I was calling people for like, hey, we'll take any size check. If you got $5,000, I'll take it. We managed to scrounge together and hit our minimum dollar amount, and we started to move to close. And then the engine out of MIT said, hey, we want in, don't close without us. And they came in with a very big check. And then it was just like a mad push. Everybody wanted in. We're, turned into a pretty good success. And then in this last round, the B, we just closed this one about a month and a half ago. It was 23 million. We went through another learning curve. And that was, a lot of our messaging wasn't really aligned with what the market wanted to hear. Chemical manufacturing is complicated, and we needed to kind of go back to basics and resimplify. And we were talking about carbon accounting and emissions reduction. These are all really important things that people want to hear about, but it was too complicated. And eventually, we came down to this simple way of saying that we electrify chemical manufacturing so that it can run on renewables. Our reactor is powered by light instead of heat. So light from LEDs and renewable electricity instead of heat from combusting fossil fuel. And ultimately, it allows us to create cheaper, cleaner chemicals, things like fuel, fertilizer, base materials for plastics, et cetera. And through that, we help the world's fight on climate change. And once we started really pushing that message, we electrify chemical manufacturing so it can run on renewables. Then, it was like magic words, abracadabra, and people started to open up. And managed to go after about 4 months of grinding the gears in the second half of 2020. We changed that initial message, and we're able to spin that into success. So that is a brief history of the past few years of our life. It's always a journey. There's lots of growth. Basically, you fall on your face and pick yourself back up and try again. And I am with 100% confidence, I can say we're not done falling on our face yet. And we still have a lot to learn. So hopefully, this has been helpful for any of the founders out there who feel frustrated hearing no 100 times. It might take 1,000 times, but eventually you'll get to that yes. Just keep trying.
Holy cow, Trevor. Michelle said, I'm using all the emojis for this one because seriously, that's an emotional roller coaster. There's one question. How did you bounce back after all of the investors dropped out?
I don't know if it was so much of a bounce back as you never stop swinging. You shouldn't let yourself get discouraged. And, I went out, that happened on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, you go back out and you start calling people. If you let yourself, get kneecapped and you don't get back up, then that's the only way you really lose. Like, you're always going to have people say no. You're always going to have people drop out. It just happens. And we were prepared for that. I probably downplayed how rough 2017 was, learning how to fundraise for the very first time. So by the time we were in the A, I'd heard no 1,000 times before. So, yeah, sure, it was a big one, a big no, and it hurt. But you just have to find the mental fortitude to keep swinging. You're not down and out until you give up.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor, for sharing your story and taking us on that roller coaster. So, for all of you who are just joining us for the Entrepreneurs panel, for the Houston We Have Impact panel, next we're going to hear from Emmeline Strout, who is co-founder and CEO of Elastique Athletics, about her journey, her fundraising journey here in Houston.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Grace, for having me and for Impact Hub. It's exciting to be here today, and it was fantastic to hear about Trevor's journey. I definitely have some shared experiences there. So it's nice. I mean, they're much further along than where we are with Elastique. We are actually, I'm happy to report today that we are oversubscribed to our pre-seed round. So that's pretty, but it's taken us quite a journey to get to there. And so as Trevor did, I'll give you a bit of the background about myself. As you can hear, I'm not from here. I'm a French citizen who arrived in Houston it's going to be 10 years this year. And before becoming an entrepreneur, I was a diplomat. I started my career at the United Nations in Geneva, working with Western African countries and helping develop their services sectors. And after that, I worked at the OECD in Paris, which is another big international organization where I worked in the Secretary General's cabinet. But life happens, and my husband was like, I don't know what's the percentage, but like most people in Houston was in the energy sector, got us to move to Houston. And I had to be very resourceful. I also became a mom in the process. And this is when my entrepreneur journey started. Actually, it started right at the time after I became a mom. And like most women, I had to deal with the body transformations that most women go through and the impact that it has on our mental health and our self-worth. And I was at the time looking for ways to take care of myself and feel my best. And I was very focused on the one aspect that all French women and the Italian women are focused on, which is how do I get rid of my cellulite before I go to the beach this summer. And so for months, I tried a bunch of products. I tried creams and everything. But like I said, I had a brand new baby and I didn't have a lot of time or the energy. And I was like, okay, this is all great, but this is not working. So after doing a lot of research and using the talents of my patent attorney husband, we came across what is like the critical innovation of Elastique, my company, which we discovered the magical power of our lymphatic system. And this is something that we all have in our bodies, but unfortunately, it's widely overlooked by everyone, even though it is like one of the most critical part of our health journey that we need to really take care of. And in my very vain, we can say, cosmetic journey, I realized that cellulite has a lot to do with improper lymphatic flow. And so after years of R&D, we decided that we were going to focus on the root of the problem. So in the lymphatic space, we realized that to get proper lymphatic flow, you need manual stimulation or movement. And so at the time, Lululemon was exploding. Everybody was starting to thinking about activewear as more athleisure. And this is when we decided to come up with active apparel that has technology inside of it, which is our proprietary technology, our micropearl beads, that basically utilize a combination of compression with our fabric and our micropearl beads to help stimulate the lymphatic flow. And so that's what we do, and it's fantastic. We've launched in 2019. We started selling our first pairs, and Grace is one of my customers. She can tell you about her experience. But we've had thousands of customers who are loving our products. And so in the fundraising space of all of this, I have a very interesting journey, because when I came up with the idea and I started refining it, and my husband was doing his MBA at Rice at the time, and we put the idea through one of the business plan drafting competitions of the class, and it went well. And then, like as we were looking into this more and more, I went to dinner with like two friends, and I said, "Oh, we think this is something big. It can be like much better. It's much better than Spanx because it actually helps improve your health." And at the occasion of two dinners, I had two sets of friends who brought us checks right then. So this is something quite incredible. It's unusual. I can guarantee you this is not what I'm going through right now. But this helped us raise enough money in like a true like friends round that helped us kick off basically all the true R&D efforts. And we've lived from this like initial friends round for quite a few years. We've been extremely good at bootstrapping with this small investment. And we needed to work on developing like great quality garments. We ran clinical testing, and we basically did our product proof of concept. And after doing all of this and launching, we realized that people really wanted it. Women resonated with my story because it's the story of millions of other women. And so we realized that this really is something that needs to grow. And so recently we went into the next phase of our fundraising journey, which is raising what we like to call our pre-seed round. Because for consumer companies, which is very different from technology companies, I feel like you have to prove yourself a little bit more for people to start really investing in you. So even though, like we were getting good traction and good sales, for institutional investors to look at us, we need to go to a very big numbers, like a very high revenue targets. And so we decided to take this opportunity to raise another friends round, like another angel round that we call our pre-seed, which is a bit smaller, to invest in that growth, so then we can achieve those revenue targets we're looking for. So then after that, we can really raise a seed round and hopefully be able to bring on true institutional investors. So in that journey, I will give you some advice to some of you who are thinking about doing what we're doing. When you have an idea and you want to create a company, you have to think about fundraising from the first day. And when I mean this is like, it's important to be out there and networking with people constantly, because you don't know who they know and what they can bring in the future when you're raising your round. And that's something that I've done early on with Elastic. We joined Station in 2017, and I've been involved in the startup community from then and making good connection. And it's been great because, like as you're developing your fundraising plan and your financial plan is very important. That's something that is not at all my background, but I was able to find the right people through that networking that I actually reached out to when I was like, okay, we're raising our pre-seed. Who do I call to help us really build like a top level financial model? And I found that person. And so I think it's just important to continue like maintaining relationships with people and being out there. And when you decide to raise money, tell everybody, because this is what we did. At first, we started raising money, like we were like trying to call everyone. And you get like, for everything, you get a lot more no's than yes. But we've had some very interesting success right now, because if I look into our current investors that are coming in, they're like other friends, they're business relations. There's people that we met through other people that are using that network. We also have customers who are, we've been communicating with some of our customers about us raising money, and because they love our products, they want to jump in. And we also recently got our newest investor through LinkedIn, which is fantastic. So I feel like it's very important to completely put yourself out there and plan for the best. Like Trevor was saying, you have to be very strong because rejection is never easy, but it's part of the game. So you have to know that it's part of it. Ignorance is also, like, for me, the most difficult, because you can send like hundreds of emails and maybe 10 people are going to respond to you. And then you have to keep on following up. Some people may never follow up with you, and some people will, and will appreciate your persistence. Because if there's another advice I can give you, is that take your advice from entrepreneurs who've done this, because everybody has an opinion about fundraising. But I think the best advice that we've gotten is actually from people who have done it for themselves. And so you have to kind of make the triage. But if you continue, you build your core group, you realize who gives you the best advice, and then it's going to work. You just have to go. If you have a good product and you have some validation, it's going to end up working.
Thank you so much, Emmeline. There's a question for you. For people without friends and family who can invest, how can they raise money? I know that you got some funding from other sources too. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, it's a matter of being out there in the community. If you're a new son, like I know Station doesn't exist anymore, but I mean, you have a Capital Factory, you have Lawson's group, the Canon. You have Grace, Grace Group, like Impact Hub, and I think it's important to be out there and go to as many events as you can. I came here from another country, had no network, so I built it from scratch as well. But I was definitely out there taking every single networking opportunity possible.
And I know you also raised recently from winning pitch competition, right?
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, that's another thing. Like, we actually participated in a few pitch events. Some of them were just, like bragging rights, which is also good, because then thanks to this, I told you, talking about it on LinkedIn, this is how we got the investor. So even though this competition didn't have any investment prize attached with it, we ended up getting an investor because we used that communication. And also we recently won another pitch competition that came with an investment prize. And tomorrow we're in the finals for the Capital Factory 50K Challenge. So hopefully we do really well there. And that's definitely a good opportunity if you don't have friends who can invest.
Thank you so much, Emmeline, for sharing your story. But next we'll move to Eric Ibarra, founder and CEO of Orders.
So I probably should start with a little bit of background on my journey as an entrepreneur. I think not unlike Trevor and Emmeline's story, in the sense that you start somewhere, you learn. I think it's been 20 years now when I started my first tech startup. It was a website for restaurants, and it was in Houston. And if you had told me back then that as an entrepreneur, you're going to get your teeth kicked in at every turn, I don't know if I'd still be. I don't know if I would have gone through it. But I think that's what I've learned over this 20 years being an entrepreneur and being in different startups. If you've got to have a knack and a yearning to learn and to improve. And as you see with a lot of companies today, that is what these companies are built on: iterative improvement. And I think that it's true in what we do today. I'll kind of talk a little bit about our company today and how we've capitalized our business. And Orders is in the lab testing space, but we are a B2B that empowers our customers to be the consumer-facing or the patient-facing entity when it comes to lab testing. And so what does that mean? Well, if you're a company that's online and you want to be selling lab testing, you need to be connected to labs that are going to intake your samples. You need to build technology to interact with patients to get their data and to give them results. And then you also have to have physicians involved, because when it comes to lab results, a lab result can be something just like a DNA test. We see those online, and you may find out that something about your ancestry. But when you have lab tests that deal with COVID or A1C, you might find out that you are high risk, and a physician should be involved to not only know that, but to be able to describe that to you as a patient, give you more information on what you should do to follow up. And so Orders provides not only the technology that allows you to interact with patients, so think custom storefront or patient portal. We also provide connections to laboratories that perform testing, so you can, through us, purchase at wholesale or pre-negotiated rates testing for your healthcare organization. Um, and then we also have a network of physicians that provides the oversight and ensures that every test on the platform is seen by a physician, results are reviewed, and should there be anything critical or any need to reach out to a patient, our physicians are performing that outreach, ensuring that there's care throughout the entire process from a licensed physician in that state. So you know, there's a lot of moving parts, as you can tell. I mean, our application, we have users on our system that are patients, that are physicians, that are laboratories, and that are what we call brands or health testing organizations. But that could be a health plan, that could be an online testing company, it could be an employer, anyone who's trying to get people tested. And we started pre-pandemic. So in 2018, when we started, our goal was to support a lot of these direct-to-consumer lab testing companies, online testing companies. And when the pandemic hit, we're on a call with I think it was the state of Washington, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Amazon, trying to figure out how we would support. I think at the time they were going to deliver a COVID test to everybody in the state of Washington. Thank God they pivoted, in the sense that that would have been a logistical nightmare, but we would have loved the business. But at the same time, it caused Orders to really think about how we support COVID testing. So we set up an entire program to respond to COVID testing. Um, and so, at the start of the business and how we really thought about capitalization, we knew that in healthcare, it is one of those things where, yes, we are in this sort of, I guess there's this thought of move fast and break things. That is probably a Silicon Valley thing. And while that is important when it comes to, yes, experimentation and trying to figure out what works, you have to remember that when it comes to healthcare, that is not always the best approach. You have to be very thoughtful about what your technology, your practices, your policies, how they will affect people, how they will affect patients, how they will affect outcomes. So, in building Orders, first thing we did was build the team. And I think Trevor mentioned this. It's super important that you have people dedicated to your cause, that believe in what you're doing. And I was fortunate, and I would say Orders was fortunate to be able to have some visibility into this space. We knew, for the most part, okay, we know we need to connect with labs. So could we have someone on our team that can advise us from a lab perspective? Same thing with the physician. We built this network of what we might call a medical advisory board, and that was the first thing we built. Loose affiliation, it was a group that was built really to help us understand this space and to pursue a business in this space. I had just come off a previous startup where I was building software for health tech companies, and I found out about this space. Started to understand from our previous customers. The way we started Orders was really, we built a prototype, and it was fortunate enough that we had the resources under our control to be able to build a prototype that we could put in front of potential customers, that we could put in front of labs, and that we could put in front of physicians, to be able to make sure that what we were building was the right solution. And so, I'll say, when it comes to our fundraising journey, you can distill down Orders into a very sort of simple notion. there are many ways to capitalize a business, and perhaps the best is the customer. And Orders has been doggedly focused on, serving the customer. I think if you have a good idea, you have a good pitch, you can get funding from outside sources. But if your idea is great and you have a good pitch to a customer, you can get revenue day one. And that is the story with Orders. We actually, I had the consulting firm, and we had this concept of what Orders could be. And, through our network, we found a potential customer who was really interested in taking these first initial steps with Orders and was open to us being in this iterative process while they were building technology on their side that would connect to our technology. And because we were able to come to an agreement, get them as our first customer, lock them into a contract, gave us the confidence to go out and actually start Orders. So in a way, we had our first customer before we even had a real sort of entity that was Orders. And we were able to leverage that into a revenue producing customer that turned into several customers. And then over the pandemic, we brought on 24 customers or so. And we had, with some companies, as you may know, of course, there were companies that did really well during the pandemic, and we definitely fell into that category. But I want to bring up investment, just like others have brought it up. Investment from outside sources is not something that we have at all said we're not going to do or participate in. In fact, the opposite's been true. In the early days, 2018, 2019, we were talking to a lot more investors then, but I think that's necessary. You have to figure out who is a potential fit for what you're doing and who's interested. And you do get a lot of no's. We've definitely got no's. We've definitely received two term sheets. For us, what we have decided on today is that we've sort of deprioritized raising from outside investors, probably for the next 30 to 60 days, maybe more. It's a result of a great cash position, that's one, but it's also the result of a unique situation in our space where we are going to focus on the customer. And in maybe 30 to 60 days, we will continue to pick up conversations with investors. But there are some opportunities that we are super focused on when it comes to the customer, when it comes to partners in the space. And we find that those interactions and those abilities to provide our company capitalization and revenue, those are priority number one for us today. We are still talking to investors. I probably text or email an investor weekly. The pool of investors who have said, "Hey, I'm willing to invest when you're ready," is a very small pool, but it exists out of relationships built over the last 3 years, to be completely honest with you. So I do think that our time to seek and to have actual outside venture capital, that I think that will come. But for us, we're the story of a bootstrapped company today. And while we like that, and we absolutely would love to have what people call dry powder in the bank, we don't know what that is. We use every dollar. And as resourceful as we can, we are growing, we are adding new features to what we do, and we're bringing on customers. So I think, every entrepreneur has to understand how they're going to capitalize the business. And I've always loved capitalizing the business from the customer. And it's something that will always be part of, I think any organization I'm part of, we're always going to focus on, number one, of course, how we can potentially, capitalize the business from the customer. And if not, then of course, outside investment is an excellent option. So, for us, that's our focus, of course, is on the customer and these potential opportunities that we're seeing in the market. But from a capitalization perspective, I think if you always have an eye for how you intend to capitalize the business through customer revenue, then you should still pursue outside investment, because if you don't get that investment, you always have customer revenue to depend on. And you always know what your flavor is when it comes to how lean you can possibly be. And we operate pretty lean. So that is Orders. That is, there's a lot more to my entrepreneurial journey, as you can imagine, in 20 years over 8 different companies. But yeah.
Thanks so much, Eric, for sharing your journey. And the importance of building a really strong company and building that traction by focusing on customers first, to bootstrap your way before even raising. So next we have Mike Seju, the founder of Global South by South Consulting, and he works with a number of different startups, both here and in Africa and South America. And so he's going to be able to share a different perspective of how some of the companies, well, first he has also he's started his own company and started raising his own funding, but also how he's helping other startups do that as well. Mike?
Yes, thank you so much, Grace. I surely appreciate it. And just like you mentioned, my entrepreneurial story started about 10 years ago. I started my own business out of Liberia. So if it wasn't complicated enough to start a business, I decided to start a business that's international in nature. We have a rum company that was started in Liberia, started basically from the field. Making rum from sugarcane juice that's produced from Liberian farmers. And that experience is really to look at funding, right? I think just like one of the earlier speakers mentioned, you want to look at funding from day one. And that's one thing that we did. And one thing we found through that process is some of the challenges for, creating a business internationally, that it's just a challenge to start the business in its own right, but then also to find the type of funding that you may need to start that business and get it moving, because the apparatus for investing is not necessarily the same in other countries as it is here in the United States. So, for as an example, for the rum company, we were just looking around. Maybe there's a venture capital or private equity or something like that, or maybe even angel investors, but that didn't necessarily exist. And then there's certain barriers for international investing that institutional investors will have, and then just the environment for having angel investors or friends and family just didn't exist. So from that experience, we did similar to what Eric mentioned, is raising money through sales, right, and having an opportunity to get into the marketplace using what resources we did have to package our products and get out there and start to increase and pour back into the business and increase our volume and productivity, so on and so forth. But it was that experience that really focus myself on the fact that there's a gap in international investing where we could fill, myself and my partner as well, Global South by South, where we help with investment strategy creation, implementation assistance, as well as entrepreneurial ecosystem building, where we can create these networks with these small and medium enterprises where it's not just a shot in the dark, right? They have people who've been there and done that, similar like Emmeline mentioned, that you have advice from myself and my partner as well, from people who have started from ground one or from ground zero and just said, hey, like, this is something that we can fill. This is expertise that we can fill into the marketplace. So one thing I did want to talk about today was just to focus on, maybe there's some companies in Houston that have an interest in possibly exporting, or possibly with bi-directional trade, where they want to import some goods from an emerging market country and start their own business. There's significant resources right now, probably more so than there's been in decades, for companies that want to export, because it's a good thing for the business, the small business community, as well as a good thing for the overall U.S. economy, for exportation and finding new customers overseas. Some of those resources you can find at the U.S. Commercial Service is a good place to start. Locally in Houston, there's a significant number of consulate generals, representation from other countries, that it may be a good place to start as far as getting connected to that country if you don't have a connection to that country already that you wanted to potentially do business in. There's also new programs, particularly if you want to do business in Africa, a new program that was just launched not too long ago called Prosper Africa, where it's basically a whole of government program that supports bi-directional trade, both import and export, for businesses, for basically focusing on private sector growth, because I think overall the model for emerging market involvement has been hasn't been working as well as it should. I'll just leave it at that. But we have companies like like my own Global South by South Consulting, as well as plenty others that want to fill that gap for folks that want to get started. So feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in business, possibly in Africa, Central South America, or the Caribbean. And one thing that I do want to bring up is that gap that I talked about as far as the friends and family round, it's probably more pronounced in developing markets where we're working to fill that gap through possible diaspora investment as well for some of these nations who don't necessarily have an apparatus for angel investment. So what does that look like? I mean, that basically means, connecting, creating an ecosystem where people can come together. Events like this, similar to what Michelle mentioned in the comments, to say, hey, let's put yourself out there, put your business out there, and have people, talk about it. I know it can be very scary. At the very beginning, no one wants to hear comments about their baby, right? But it's one of those things that you have to do if you really want to, create a network of folks, and then you figure out where people can work together. And similar to what Trevor mentioned early on, I mean, you hear a lot of no's, right, for certain, but that's part of the journey. So with that, there's a lot of expertise out there. So feel free to reach out. I'll keep my comments brief and open up for any questions.
Thank you so much, Mike. Since we're getting close, we have just a couple more minutes. Rather than asking one person this question, I'm going to ask each person for one answer to this question. So the question is, what is the one most important successful tip that you have for anybody who is fundraising right now?
Yeah, so keep it simple. Find a way to explain as much as you can in one sentence. Like, there's a great Mark Twain quote. I didn't have time. I don't know if this is a real Mark Twain quote, but it's I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one. It takes a whole lot of work to hone your message to as short and as powerful as possible. But that has been the most impactful thing in our journey. The ability, finding a way to communicate what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you matter and what value you provide in as short and in as compact as possible. And so I would think about that a lot. I see so many pitch decks where there's 100 words per slide, and it just never flies. So short and powerful.
So since you've said that, what is your example? What's your short and powerful message?
For Syzygy, we electrify chemical manufacturing. We allow it to run on renewables, cheaper, cleaner chemicals. If you know nothing else about us, we electrify chemical manufacturing to allow it to run on renewables and make cheaper, cleaner chemicals. That's all you really need to know about Syzygy.
Awesome. Thank you. I remember that now. Cheaper, cleaner chemicals. Thank you. Trevor, Emmeline, what is your tip?
I would say do your research on the investors that you're talking to. Try to get information on what they invest in, what is usually the check size that they write, to make sure that you don't waste their time and your time. I think that's very important.
Thank you. I think that also ties in with your story of finding that investor through LinkedIn, right? So learning about people and what they're passionate about or what they're interested in can help you raise money from them. Eric, what is your tip?
Yeah, I would say, I think every investor needs to have confidence in why this team or why this time, right? And being real clear about why you're the best team to execute. Like I said, we built the team first, and we knew that we didn't know about certain aspects of the business, but being able to address that up front, fill in those gaps with the right advisors or the right co-founders, brings a lot of confidence to meetings when you can share with an investor, hey, you may know this, but did you know this? Or, did you know that, you can kind of add to the conversation through your advisors or through your expertise. It really helps when it comes to speaking to investors.
Thanks. And reading between the lines from that piece of advice, it's also making sure when you say team, your advisory board is part of your team, right? And then making sure maybe people that you invite to be part of your team have broad networks or have depth of expertise to be able to help you with your fundraising. And Mike, how about you?
I would say just to really focus on starting where you are. I think most investors, they want to see traction, right? They want to see some type of momentum or inertia. And then unfortunately, a lot of small businesses will fall into that space where they say, well, I need the money first before I get started, or, that chicken and egg thing. And if you just start where you are, it may not be very, it may not be very sexy and all that, but if you show some type of attraction, some interest, then you put that first foot forward, and now you have an opportunity to really tell your story about where you started and kind of where you're going. So I would say just get started wherever you are.
Yeah, and then bringing that full circle, getting started, even if you fail forward. I mean, it takes you on the roller coaster that Trevor took us on earlier, right? That's part of your story, and it actually engages more people when they learn about what you tried and how you failed and how you kept picking yourself back up. So thank you all for joining us and sharing your stories with us right now. And thank you for everybody who's tuning in for Investing 2030. Next, we're going to have a break, but we will have breakout rooms. So if you want to stay and chat with us and connect into the Zoom, feel free to connect, find ways to collaborate, or just catch up with each other. Thanks. From climate change to economic, gender, and racial inequalities, to crises in health, education, and more, areas targeted by the Global Sustainable Development Goals, we know that it will require more inclusion, more ideas, more innovation, and more investment to effectively address all of these issues and get our planet on a positive track by 2030. Stay tuned to Impact Hub Houston and subscribe for more discussions and networking sessions to learn from and connect with people at the forefront of our impact and investment ecosystem.